All right, football's almost here, everybody. It's time to get smarter again about what we watch every Saturday with a whole lot of new at Florida State. That's why Dominic Robinson, lead football analyst for Warchant.com, is here breaking down Tony White All-22 film. Dominic, it's been too long, but I'm so glad we're back in the groove now.
Ecstatic, to say the least. This is I'm happy to be back with you. I've missed you. I've missed you guys. I've missed talking ball with you guys. I'm so excited for this season. So many new coaches, players. Obviously, my son is there now, so that's gonna be special. Some special times, man. So yeah, I'm so glad it's back. I've got my Pinnacle stuff on because I just came from Picture Day. So Picture Day lets you know that ball's coming. That's the only thing we like about Picture Day. Everything's brand new. So really excited.
It's a total mystery. But in order to figure out what we could be for Florida State defensively, we're looking at what Tony White has been in the past. And you said before we got started recording today that you like to look at a certain situation to learn who somebody is as a coach or a coordinator. And what situation is that?
Yeah, usually when I want to learn about somebody, either an opposing coach or if I'm just studying, I always start with third down. I shouldn't say always, but usually I'm going to start with third down. Third down tells you a lot about the way that someone approaches the game, the way that they see the game, sort of who they think they are. You really show your personality on third down, whether you're exotic and the fronts are crazy and guys are lining up all over the place, or you're incredibly static and you sort of play one coverage. Again, it tells you, lets you know the personality of the guy. So with Tony, I pulled up every third down from 2021 and 2024. So 2021 was while he was at Syracuse. And Mike has said many times, Coach Norvell has said many times, the reason he got this job, was how much trouble he had game planning for Tony White and how great of a challenge it was to go against him. So I wanted to watch all of that. So I watched those. And then I watched, obviously, last year to kind of see the evolution, how he's grown, how he's changed, what's different with different guys, different body types in a different conference. So here's a third down. I think this is like 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 12 versus Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter. You can see they're in a 5-man front. There's probably 6 defensive backs on the field. The one thing that's great about Tony is you never really know when you watch his defenses. It's hard to know what positions guys play because he uses multiple versatile guys and body types in different positions. And everything is fluid. There's no guy that, just plays safety and he just stands back in the middle of the field and closes the middle. That guy might be on the line of scrimmage. He might be at linebacker depth, and he could be dropping. He could be pass rushing. He uses all of his guys to be incredibly versatile pieces on the chessboard. So here, this is a simulated pressure. It looks like they're going to bring 5. You can see the boundary backer, drops out, and he's essentially just spying the quarterback. So they end up rushing 4. The other thing you'll notice with Tony's defenses is they consistently slant, angle, and stunt the defensive linemen. You rarely see just a straight up rush with his guys. So that linebacker that's showing here, the linebacker that's on to the boundary side of the short side, is up in the B gap, and that just showing that pressure holds that guy just long enough so that defensive tackle can cross face, and that's the guy that ends up making the sack. So again, just no static fronts. The offensive linemen are never going to know sort of where they're going to be attacked. Another third down. This one I think is 3rd and 12. Very similar front, okay, and similar look on the back end. And you can see the boundary backer again is walked up into the B gap, and they sort of show that same pressure where he's dropping out. And instead now the tackle who last time got the sack that crossed the face of the center, he pretends like he's going to cross the face, and then he goes and works back to the field. And so now the field defensive tackle, so now both defensive tackles have a sack on what looks like a similar stunt, one setting up the other. You just never know where you're going to get hit from. You know that they're going to bring pressure. You know that the guys are going to stunt, which here is not even bringing pressure. They're only bringing 4. But to the offensive line, this feels like they brought 5. That's what they call it, a simulated pressure. It looks like they're going to bring 5. That guy ends up dropping out. So you have 7 guys in coverage. And because the defensive line are moving and angling, you feel like there's multiple guys that are rushing, more than 4.
It looks like even without contact in some circumstances, you're talking about that boundary linebacker, all he's trying to do is manipulate a key offensive lineman out of the equation. So he gets one-on-ones or he gets leverages.
And that's what a lot of these fronts are doing. If you can see to the field side, all those guys have to have one-on-ones because the boundary guard is being tied up by number 5 standing there. So now I know I have one-on-ones. And then the thing what makes this so complex or so much better is now once the ball's snapped and I know I'm going to my one-on-one, that guy's not stagnant. He's moving to go somewhere else. He's not just rushing up the field. So here's a 3-down look, a little bit different than what we've seen. This looks like about a 3rd and 14 or so. But you end up still getting a 4-man rush. And again, like I said before, the games up front. So when we talk about games, I'm talking about stunting up front. So instead of just rushing those 4 guys, the end is going inside, and that linebacker there is going to now be your edge rusher. So the tackle ends up taking the end, leaving a tight edge. And that's the same guy that gets a nice little blow-up shot right there. A couple plays from 2021. Again, we heard Coach Norvell say multiple times, this is when, essentially when I think Tony got the job. So here's a 4-man front with the 2 linebackers rushing up into the A and B gaps. So the boundary A gap and the field B gap. And they're running 6-man pressure, which we didn't see any 6-man pressure in that Nebraska clip. A great job by Tony. Tony understood what he was going to get. I think you might remember one of my breakdowns a while back of Coach Norvell and talking about formation into the boundary. This year they were throwing a lot of formation screens and formation to the boundary. So Tony was ready for that. He decided what he was going to do was go ahead and pressure it and play this what I call point coverage. So that puts the star on the number 2 or the point of the bunch. And that way, if they do run screens, that guy can shoot the screen. And if not, then we're just going to play man on the number 1 and number 3 receiver. And we're just going to bring pressure. So we know the ball has to come out quick, which is why this corner is able to tackle him on a 4-yard hitch. He should know that ball's coming out. And he shouldn't be, even just that little backpedal step he probably doesn't need, but does a good job to get him on the ground. So now it's 4th and 1 and they got a kick. But interesting, completely different look from what we saw. And that's what we're going to see from Tony is just a immense level of diversity. 1 week you'll probably see 3-man fronts and no pressures. And then the next week you might see 6-man, 5-man fronts with 6-man pressure. Here's a good look at a more traditional 3-3-5 look that we hadn't seen yet. I showed 5-man up, I showed 6-man, pressure on this last one, and then I showed a 3-man rush where they added one. Here's your traditional 3-man look. Looks like they're going to drop 8, and then they have the Mike linebacker spy and then release or rush late. So he's with Jordan's athleticism, I'm sure they're thinking, okay, we want to make sure that we don't pressure this guy because if we send that 4th guy, rush him early, Jordan can escape. But that nose is rushing and slanting outside to make a natural lane for the ad here late. 3-man front. And this was the clip that I wanted to show, just watching the effort. So there's nothing special about what they're doing schematically here. All right, everybody's just rushing, but there's just going to be incredible effort. I will say, even too, just watching how well these guys are coached. So this field end, right at this point, he realizes that he's upfield. He sticks his foot in the ground, and then instead of trying to chase the play, he waits. He's creating an edge. He's still waiting. All right, everybody else is going to the ball, but he knows I'm not going to make that play out there. I'm just going to stay over here and create an edge, and he doesn't go upfield. I thought you can tell that that's coached. That's really good. But I've just watched all these orange jerseys just flying. Everybody's covered. They're just trying to get to the ball. And even though 13 is so special, nobody stops playing. Everybody's playing. All right, so here's a 3rd and 9 in the red zone. You have your 3 down front. All 3 of these guys are tucked inside of the tackles to present a problem in terms of protection. Okay, you can see both the running back and quarterback are having to point out, okay, who are we hot off of? Making sure that everything's communicated, and it doesn't matter. Okay, they run an internal game there where they're actually looking like they're going to pick the tackle. So that linebacker is trying to pick the tackle so that the end can come in. And it actually, Florida State does a good job here picking it up, but they still just get enough penetration. But you can see, again, just the type of chaos that a Tony White defense presents, with these 3 linebackers here inside of the tackles, who knows which one of them are coming and where they're coming. And once they do, you got to sort it out, and they actually do a good job of sorting it out, and that results in this. He's got to get out of there, And again, Coach Norvell is watching this and going, well, if I don't have special guy at 13, I probably don't win this. Tony beat me here, but I've got this guy at quarterback, and he just drops a dot. Big time play on his part. But again, schematically, you're beat here. You just have a guy that's better than the other guy. This is why recruiting is so important.
Yeah.
Because I can coach up a bunch of things. I can scheme up a really good look. But you have the one guy back here who's just better. He's an athlete, and then he drops a dime on the sideline. Okay. But you can see the internal pressure here, the pick stunt right there. Number 7 tries to pick 52, work a game inside, and 58 does a good job of picking it up, but there's just too much penetration, forces Jordan to roll out, and then he drops a dot.
Obviously, it's more physical than the sport I'm about to reference, but I'm seeing a through line here. I see basketball in this, Dominic, like screening, setting up for your best shooter. In this case, you're setting it up for your best edge rusher or your linebacker to get a clear path at the quarterback.
Yeah. There is that, and there's just a lot of creativity within that, and that's exactly what he does. He just does a lot of things that just even those first 2 clips that I showed. We're essentially running offense on defense. We're going to run this play,
right?
And then when you think we're going to run this play, we're going to actually run the play that's off of it. So I wanted to show this one. All of those were 3rd and long clips. Here's a 3rd and short clip. So you might think, oh man, it's 3rd and short. We're in heavy personnel. You can see Florida State is in heavy personnel here. There's got 2 receivers in the game. So that means that there's a tight end and a fullback, or probably 2 tight ends. Tony is not going to sit back and be passive. They're just going to send pressure here. They're sending 2 off the edge here. And the 3 linemen are slanting to the boundary, slanting to the left. So they're slanting left so that they can run edge pressure here. They're going to go 2 off the edge. Gives you a free shot at the running back. Jordan pulls it, but now since I'm 2 off the edge, I've got a second guy that's going to wrap around. So there's my overlap linebacker, number 3. That's not even on a pressure, but it's 3rd and 2, so he's able to play aggressive downhill, and there's a big-time stop right here. But the aggressiveness, again, Tony he's not going to sit back. He's going to be very aggressive. He's going to send rushers, and the defensive line is going to be moving. They're not just going to be rushing. You're not going to know which direction they're going, where they're going. It's going to be a moving target. So here again, so you don't see a lot of six-man pressure, but we saw it in this game. And
this is the hold. This is the play.
This is it. Yeah, and this play may have got Tony White this job, because this pressure was perfectly timed, and you can't ask for anything better than a clean run through the A gap. And there's a hold on the edge, and again, number 13 is Superman, and somehow escapes A-gap pressure, which just doesn't happen, and ends up just creating magic on 3rd and long and getting the ball inside the red zone, inside the 15. But watching, what they did, again, this is the same thing they did earlier. The bunch to the field here. Before it was bunch to the boundary, but with the bunch to the field, Tony White was going to alleviate screens by playing point with this the nickel or star standing out here. He's already deciding, you know what, we're going to put pressure on the quarterback instantly. We're not going to sit back and be passive and see what this guy's going to do. We're going to force him to beat us. And he did, with a little help from an official. Yeah. But he did, and that's where, again, if you're Mike Norvell, that's where you're sitting, after the game, and you go, gosh, dang it, man, this guy keeps beating me. He had me here. He brought six-man pressure. I couldn't protect it. He's got a clean run at my quarterback through the A gap, and he missed. 13 makes a miss, and then I don't get a hold called there on 76 on the edge, and because of it, we get a huge 3rd down conversion, end up winning the game. But you tip your hat to the defensive coordinator and you go, man, you're on one today.
It really is a lot of fun to watch Tony White's defenses at work, because you get a greater sense, and because of the education we got today, Dominic, you get a greater sense of the nuances of how he tries to free up his best players. You could see why it would be easy to recruit to this defense for specifically a linebacker. He's scheming up ways for the C's to part in front of a linebacker to go make a play or collect whatever trash is coming his way to stop it. Like, this is, and it doesn't come from just a 3-man front, to your point. Based on today's look, I'd say it's about even between a 3 and a 4 down presentation. So this is something that we need to be expecting as we're watching in the stands, that it really could be that different series to series and game to game.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you just kind of touched on was, at neither of these spots, both Syracuse and Nebraska, did he have this, All-American level talent, really at any position. So what will really be interesting is, how does he utilize the pieces? Does he have that at Florida State? That's kind of the first thing, is like, we're assuming that our players are better than the players that he had, but we don't know that yet because we haven't got to watch them play. But then once he does find those players and what they're talented at, how he then begins to sort of use them offensively. How does he attack? How does he pick offensive linemen? How is he, what coverages is he playing that are highlighting the fact that he's got guys that, can cover and play one-on-one and press and challenge offensive players. Consistently, a Tony White defense gives you an opportunity to be in the game.